Hello everyone, good day. Welcome to my class in nursing pharmacology. Previously, we briefly discussed the overview of your anti-infectives and their mechanisms of action. Today, we will continue our topic about some of the drugs that are under your anti-infectives like your antibiotics. Since we will be dealing right now about your antibiotics, we will discuss also their classifications, mechanisms of action, indications, adverse effects, important points that nurses should be aware of, and also I will give you some of the memory jogger to recall the names of each drug involved. Now, I will start with antibiotics. Antibiotics. So what is the meaning of antibiotics? Actually, they are drugs that are against with bacteria. So against with bacteria. Since you have known the term already, bacteria, in your past subjects like anatomy and physiology and also microbiology. So again, your knowledge from those two subjects are very important also to be integrated, especially when we are dealing with pharmacology. And since we are also discussing antibiotics, terms like your parts of the cell is very important to know, and also their normal function. By the way, bacteria is a unicellular type of an organism kasi isa lang, they are composed of a single cell. Kasi pag marami, tinatawag na silang mga multicellular. Terms like prokaryotic and eukaryotic microorganism, actually they are a broad category of your microorganism. Kasi pag sinabi nating prokaryotic, ang mga example nun is yung mga bacteria and also your archaea. Actually, yung mga prokaryotic na mga microorganism, sila yung mga, they don't have actually true nucleus, no? Wala. Pero, meron silang specific structure din sa kanilang cell. Inside of their cell. Isa na dito yung tinatawag na nucleoid. Kasi pag sinabi nating nucleoid, it is a nucleus-like structure. So, parang nucleus. Kaya tinatawag nga sila they don't have a true nucleus. On the other hand, your eukaryotic microorganism, they have a membrane-bound organelle like your nucleus that cannot be located in your prokaryotic na mga microorganism. So pag sinabi nating eukaryotic, since they have their membrane-bound organelle, specifically the nucleus contains the genetic material, that is your DNA. Also, in your prokaryotic, since they have a nucleoid, so magkaiba yung term na nucleoid and nucleus as I mentioned. The nucleoid also contains a genetic material, that is your DNA. So, ano mga example din ng mga eukaryotic? Again, those are your plants, animals, fungi, and protists. So again, your protist has a wider classification. So your protist, example, your protozoa. So in the protozoa, madami din. So example ng mga protozoa are your amoeba. Another example of your protist is your algae. So by the way, I think you have known those so far. So let us go about some of the certain things that we must have to understand about your antibiotics and also your bacteria. So I abbreviated this into GABs. So what are GABs? So G stand for gram. Why I'm saying this gram? Because there are bacteria or that are said to be gram negative and gram positive. And there are also antibiotics that are against specifically with gram negative and specifically to a gram positive type of bacteria. Or there are also antibiotics that are against to this both of two type of bacteria. So pag sinabi natin gram negative, actually marami silang mga pagkakaiba. But certainly according to their component in their cell wall, kasi yung cell wall nila, if this is the cell, so sa labas ng kanilang cell, the cell wall or cell membrane, the other term is plasma membrane, meron silang tinatawag ng mga peptidoglycan, no? Peptido peptidoglycan. Okay. Since meron tayong tinatawag na gram negative, as I said, and gram positive, so ano ibig sabihin ng gram negative? Actually, yung mga gram negative, maninipis ang kanilang mga peptidoglycan. So they have a thin manipis peptidoglycan. Actually, the peptidoglycan is a molecule that consists of amino acids and sugar. Your gram positive, actually kung manipis ang sa mga gram negative, ito naman ay makakapal. They have a thick peptidoglycan. Okay, what's another A? First A stands for your aerobic. Your aerobic type of bacteria, actually I'm speaking also with the bacteria because there are also bacteria that cannot live with the presence of oxygen, and there are also bacteria that can live with the presence of oxygen, or they depend on the presence of oxygen. So your aerobic bacteria, actually these are your bacteria that depends on, so aerobic depends on oxygen for survival. And the second A stands for on. There's a prefix on. Anaerobic. Anaerobic type of bacteria doesn't depend on O2 for survival. So, ganun ang pagkakaiba nila. The first B stands for bacteriostatic. Bacteriostatic. So, pag sinabi nating bacteriostatic, actually, they are a group of antibiotic that prevents the growth of bacteria. So again, the terms there is that they prevent the growth of bacteria. Prevents the growth. Of bacteria. The next B stands for your bactericidal. The cidal term there is your cells. Bactericidal. Pag sinabi natin mga bactericidal na mga antibiotic, these are your antibiotics that directly kill the bacteria. So directly kill, no? Diretsong pinapatay yung bacteria. Directly kill the bacteria. Mamaya i-lecture ko sa inyo ano yung mga antibiotics na they directly kill the bacteria, or they are a bactericidal type of antibiotic. Next S is your spectrum. Ano ibig sabihin ng spectrum, by the way? Spectrum. Okay. Spectrum, actually, this is your coverage. no? Kasi yung antibiotic may coverage yun eh kung ano ang kaya niyang mga patayin ng mga klaseng mga bacteria. Actually, there are in two types. First is your broad spectrum. Okay. Pag sinabi natin mga broad spectrum na mga antibiotic, no? Sila yung may kakayahan na or they are actually active against a wider number of bacterial types, no? Active or against. Active against wider bacterial types. Bacterial types. And your narrow second type of spectrum can be a broad spectrum or a narrow spectrum. Narrow. Now, narrow spectrum type of bacteria, I mean antibiotics, are active against a selective group of bacterial cells. So they are against with selective or selective types of bacteria or selective bacterial types. So that is their difference. So again, there are some things we need to consider, that is your GOBs. Your G stands for the gram. As I said, na meron tayong mga gram positive or gram negative, anaerobic and anaerobic, those bacteria that depends for the presence of oxygen, and those anaerobic does not depend on oxygen for survival kasi the prefix an means absence. So if the antibiotics, there are also antibiotics that are effective for those type of bacteria, no, mga anaerobic, and there are also antibiotics that are effective to the anaerobic type of bacteria. That is why I also emphasize this type of bacteria, aerobic and not anaerobic. Next is your bacteriostatic, that prevents the growth of bacteria, while the bactericidal, they directly kill the bacteria. The spectrum actually can be broad or narrow. No, yung spectrum, pag sinabi ng spectrum, that is the coverage of the antibiotics, the effects, no, of the antibiotics as coverage pala. Actually, pag sinabi din nating broad type na mga na mga spectrum ng antibiotics, so kung kaya niyang pumatay ng gram positive and gram negative, so they can also mean as a broad, no? Broad kasi kaya na wider eh, no? Kaya na dalawahan, dual ang kanyang effect. Yung narrow naman, specific yung narrow. Pwede siyang pumatay lang ng gram positive or a gram negative type of bacteria. So that is my introductory portion to explain first some of the things about antibiotics and also bacteria before I will discuss the classifications of your antibiotics. First is your penicillin. So let us proceed to my this is the part 1 of explaining to you about the antibiotics, the overview of antibiotics. So abangan ninyo yung aking part 2 about the classification of your antibiotics.